Get through it.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Right?
All right, we are city council study session and business meeting, January 17th, 2023. We will start with Andy Glett.
Mayor and council, I'm sure to give another update. FY24 budget. We're slowly getting the bits and pieces together for the FY24 budget. Some of the finalization of the budget that you're taking tonight. We already will finalize those numbers. But tonight, we're going to talk about evaluations that we received from the county. Some of the major changes or drivers in our FY24 budget. The civic organization will revisit the civic organization request and then talk about after following the ranking survey and then the next steps that will be taken in the budget process. So I want to talk about the overall valuation change that we received from the county. So the valuations that we received were on the lower side of the average for the past 10 years. Since there were valuations, since these were evaluations from January 1st of 2022, I think that some of this impact was from COVID, some of the lack of activity during COVID and some of the recovery in 2021. But you notice that it was on the lower side of our average for those past 10 years. And, you know, inflation has been at 8% and our taxable valuation only went up less than 3%, around 2.5%. So that's going to have a major impact on our budget overall for FY24. So our taxable valuation change, we compared to FY23 to 24, you can see that multifamily was rolled into the single family residential. This was the last year was last year of the multifamily having its own valuation, and that was at 63%. 63% of the multifamily buildings were taxed at 63%. Now they've been rolled down to 56%, along with the residential. So we've had some growth in residential taxable valuation. There were some construction that went on, but the increase mainly due to the addition of the multifamily. And then you'll see the commercial and industrial or taxable valuation has gone down 5% and 6% and 5% for industrial. And a lot of major part of this for commercial and industrial is what's called the business property tax credit. And this has been in place for the last couple of years, but we haven't really talked about it because it was already in the county was already taking care of this. We would be given a taxable valuation. We would figure out what the property tax dollars we would receive from that. But the county would give credit to commercial industrial property owners who applied for it, a credit, so that first 150,000 of their value would be given the residential rollback. Now they're going to be given it automatically. They don't have to apply for it. So every commercial and industrial property gets the residential rollback on their first $150,000 of valuation. And what that does is that it rolls back our taxable valuation, and we are supposed to receive that credit later on, kind of like a homestead credit the state has had for several years. The credit goes into the taxable valuation, so the valuations roll back, but we get that credit later on if it's fully funded by the state. There's some things that go into that, whether the state, it's a standing appropriation so that there should be money for it, but whether it's fully funded or not, that comes into whether the state does their budgeting. So just to show some of the impact for the taxable valuation change, the general fund valuation, 100% valuation is 157.5 million. That's with the TIF valuation removed. And then the rollback, the 9% that we normally get for commercial industrial we would have a taxable valuation of 141 million, 141.8 million. The taxable valuation that we received from the county was actually 123.5 million. So the transfer of the business property tax credit was 18.2 million. So when we figured that out with the levy portion of the overall levy that's for the general fund and for employee benefits, which is $12.15, 221,000 is the business property tax credit that we received this year. And so that's going to be something that we have to take into account when we go into the next year. We're going to account for it in our budget. That portion of the money that we receive will be that business property tax credit.
So that's gonna be in fiscal year 25 then, or are we looking at it? So it's starting July 1 then. So we're gonna be out $221,350 because of the changes the state made in the.
From the beginning, and we're supposed to receive that in December and then another payment in the spring. If it's fully funded, and we
Right.
receive full amount.
Right.
We receive some.
In other words, we're not gonna rely on that money
Yeah,
for an ongoing, it'd be for something
we
to,
just have to know that, right, you know, that there's a possibility that it might not be.
come, okay.
Wow.
So some of the major, I want to talk just about some of the major drivers for budget. Some of this is personal, some of this isn't. Main one was that we've given a directive from the council to fully fund the chamber request. The communications director for salary and benefits, 107,000. We had to increase the K-9 officer for taking care of the animal by 400 overtime hours, so that's just under 25,000. We had talked about at the HR Green meeting on the startup of the new work facility that we were going to have additional personnel to help Rick with running the new plant. So we're looking at assistant director, and we're still working on the salary and benefits for that position. And the staff requested additional personnel. We have an EMS captain and fire marshal to help with the organization of the department, the fire department and EMS department. The fire marshal does more of the inspections for building inspections. An additional inspector for community development, assistant library director, and then an additional street operations specialist that we could maybe move somebody up to crew leader position so that we have some more field supervisory people out there, you know, with the guys as their work.
All of those inclusive of benefit insurances and.
Correct. We're including all that currently in the budget. Okay, so for the civic organization request, I have listed here the civic organization, how they came in for the ranking survey that the council took. As you know, when we figure out conservative budgeting for the hotel motel tax that we received of 200,000, we have 60,000 for civic organization request. So if we were to just limit it at that, we would be down to about where the Warren County Fair is for that funding. So one of the earlier directives from the council was to fully fund those requests. However, it's about 44,000 that we will be taking out of our reserves for that request. One of the things that last year, our hotel motel tax was a little bit higher than what we anticipated. We had actually received available for nonprofits about 70,000. So when we figured out the request, we had 60,000 earmarked for those requests. We took the extra 10,000, we put it into Park and Rec. If we were to figure that we were going to receive that same amount and have that same amount available, we'll have 70,000. One of the recommendations I was going to make to the council was that we change the Downtown Merchants Association to 10,000. That would lower the overall amount to just about $75. Receive that. On all the.
Andy,
This is open to discussion.
Keep Indianola Beautiful, did they submit their application and ask for 6,000? Because
Yes,
wasn't
ma'am.
last time it was for 1,000?
It was for 6,000.
It was for 6,000, that's what we had.
I was there. If council wishes to
I-
discuss.
I know Ben and I had talked about this. I thought we were gonna maybe discuss this more at our retreat on February 7th.
And Andy and I talked about maybe putting it on board, having you put stickers on, all that kind of stuff. It's really however you want.
They're gonna give you guys enough time to have everything ready to go then. Not to be approved the first meeting in March.
We would have to know pretty much what we're doing. I mean, property tax dollars wise, and then once we get the notice for the hearing, we'll have to have that established by that time because there'll have to be there's changes. I think as long, if we were to put a certain amount in there to fully fund everything, we can put that amount in there. And then we can change that later on.
You know,
Council directors.
Well, I know Gwen wanted to be involved in the conversation too on this and.
I don't have a problem with that. I just wanted to make sure you
And I
guys.
think if we know what our pot of money is,
Right.
it's kind of semantics how we break it up. But if you tell us you've got 74,000 figured out on these groups, I think we could work really well.
Well, we really only have 60,000,
It's- Yeah.
right? So that comes from the hotel motel tax.
Yeah.
60,000 is what we've had in the past. Last year, we had some.
At 70.
We had a decent. Now, revenue might be going up if we get another hotel. That'll take some time to go.
Other thing is to.
That's been
Yes.
Correct. And
Andy,
the council directive was to move that to a.
Andy, what's been obviously the trend has been upward on the hotel motel tax. Is that a fair estimate to say that we've kind of been on an upward trajectory a little bit? And with high increased room rents, obviously the tax increases as well, would be my assumption as well.
It very, very slowly. We've only got a few hotels. And we hadn't had any new construction yet for hotels. Well, we should, I think there's one that's in the hospital.
Sure.
Once it's constructed. and starts.
Sure. So maybe you don't have this number, and I apologize for asking this question, and if you don't have it, you can get it to us, but so on an annual basis, we're seeing maybe a 2%, 3% increase. Do you have any clue? I mean,
It might be.
Okay, so not much. Yeah. $1,200 or
I
something.
mean, it was about 170 something in 21 and then. In 22, you know.
Just, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just share that with us, maybe a 5-year, what's happened 5 years, so we can kind of take a look at that. Rents are gonna increase for a room, and so that should increase a little bit too, but if we can have kind of a gauge, it might help us a little bit. Thank you. And I apologize for not asking that.
Oh, no problem. And so, I mean, we can discuss this more. I didn't know that there'd be more discussion.
I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this because that seemed a little steep, but I wasn't prepared to go that high with what we're asking for, but not that I want to take away from what they're doing, but that just seemed awful. So we would still be, you said we pick up 10 from what we did before, so that would make it 70, so we'd still be 4,500 we'd have to find.
Plus, you guys.
I'm in favor of going over what we get from the hotel motel tax. They've seen prior screening, ways that are on it.
At the last meeting, the Keep Indianola Beautiful. I guess I was under the assumption too that previously they had requested 1,000 because that was what was put on there. For like
what
an amount.
That was
in my meeting.
suggested. I think that was a suggested.
Yeah.
Funding, even though they hadn't submitted.
We'll be giving them, and that's the question about what we've given them in the past.
It's always been 6,000.
Yeah.
What do they, I mean, I know they do stuff, so this is a purely ignorance, and I know Heather, you know like more about it. What do they do? And you know, but.
They mainly work with. Park and Rec.
Like cleanups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or-
I mean, I'm sure it's.
They did the signage that.
I'm sure it's spent well. I just don't know. I'm asking out of ignorance.
In the past, they've done mural. They've helped with planters.
Did they do a restroom or two at one of the, like the trailhead or something? down there?
I know
Yeah,
they've
I
done
think they've done
signage and
just
they did,
more
I
of
think
that
they
type
did
of
the
stuff.
light.
Yeah, and they used to do the lights around the square.
Yes.
I don't know if Doug is.
The boys from.
So anyway, we can leave it here. One of the things I will have to, moving forward, I know that Robert Andrews, our auditor, will probably touch on this. He does more testing for our contributions to civic organizations. That they come in for what they're, how they're using it. So we're gonna have more reports. That's the use given.
Nice one.
Yes.
And it's just because I don't know. So I know I get a lot of thank you letters from Bravo when they contribute dollars, and I know that like the Des Moines Opera receives dollars from them as well too.
Yeah.
So that kind of one where maybe they could get the $8,500 from Bravo.
And that's a question I had too, because to me, it seems like it's kind of like a double dipping situation. And if we want to move away from organizations that are continually requesting amounts every single year and go towards actually funding, one-time requests,
Yeah,
that's something we've got to look at adjusting.
And the opera
they-
certainly brings in tourism. I mean,
Yeah,
the dollars is well spent with them. I'm just asking, is that something they could potentially get from?
they get an annual, they get a fairly large one from Bravo. We pay in that 57,000 to Bravo. They get about 4 times that back. So, and they always have, and they are one of the major recipients from when Bravo gives their stuff out, which has always been a net gain for our basically our community in a sense. I think so. Just a few years ago was the first time they'd ever asked, and it was to fill a gap in when they were constructing that building and adding on. And then they've had a couple of things since then. And I can't remember what this one was for this year, but I guess I looked at it as a priority just from the simple fact that they bring a few $1 million into, and that's where when I laid out my priorities, I kind of went with that. Other than the Concert Association, that's kind of my heart. That is number one because it's $500. Yeah. They don't ever ask for anything other than, and if not, then I'll pay for it myself. But I think.
Well, I noticed this year too, we didn't have a request from the Dollars for Scholars either.
No, because
Well, and
we're
that's-
trying to limit it to
Right.
And you have
Should
to.
have never been in there to be heard, in my opinion, so.
I think you're right, John. I didn't, I think it's important that we keep that in there just from the fact that it's our dollars are more than returned to us. Anytime you get a return of twice or 3 times what you've invested, it's obviously something. I don't have a problem.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be, we kind of know a consistent, we're probably gonna have to maybe set some limits on this a little bit, I think, going forward. This has been one of those things that's been kind of started here, we've kind of worked our way and we talked about a matrix in the past of, what types of things to, pluses and minuses to figure it out. But I almost wonder if some point in time that we're starting to see big numbers, and I get they all have needs and I completely get it, but we only have so much and yeah,
Where do we apply as a city?
right.
I guess my other thing is like, and I'm not trying to pick on them, I'm just using them as an example, but the Des Moines Metro, every year it's the same amount. But how can you be needing the exact same amount for different,
Which one of the partnership?
the Des Moines Metro, so
The
opera,
opera?
so every year it's 8,500. So every year their repairs are exactly 85,
Yeah, I don't know, because again, I guess I didn't, because it was 18,000 the first year they asked for anything in that, but that's been 4 or 5 years ago.
We'd have to look at their.
Yeah, I don't
application
remember
and
that.
last year it
see
was
what they want to
Was
do.
it? Okay. I
And Balloon Classic, last year they asked for the same amount.
Yeah,
Actually, I think they asked for more and we didn't.
yeah,
We
yeah,
didn't
they
give them
did.
what they asked for.
No, I know we didn't last year. I'm just saying they asked for the 15.
Yeah, I think it was 15,000.
I think-
So if the council's okay with us going with this, we'll be able to discuss it more.
That's fine.
And I think if we, we use that number, that 60,000, where we know that that's probably a little bit more solid. And we can split it up and how to do it.
All right. So our next steps, next week, I'll be getting in touch with, mayor and council to set up some meetings, next week to discuss the council, the FY 24 budget more in depth. And then I'll have another presentation on February 6th. We'll be doing the maximum property tax dollars hearing on February 21st for, the maximum property tax dollars from the general fund. And then finally wrapping up with the budget hearing and adoption on March 20th.
Andy, at our next budget hearing on the 6th. Numbers on if we had to carry over a deficit from, I think you gave us a chart one time that showed that. The fiscal year ended in January or June 30th. How much money did we actually carry over that we didn't spend, that we'd already allocated or budgeted for certain things, but never spent that? Can we get a number from you on that so we know where we are on that as well on that February 6th meeting?
Yeah, well, I probably had discussed with that.
I think you gave us something, but it just so we have that. So I just want to know what our carryover was from the year before.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm going to ask one more question before you sit down though. So we do have our assessments now from the county, right?
Yep.
We don't know what our rollback is yet though, correct?
No, we do know what a rollback are.
So-
Taxable valuation.
Pardon me?
That's our taxable valuation.
Okay, that's right. Assessments, yeah. Percentage wise, it went from one to one.
Valuations. What was it? 0.68.
That's the check.
Yeah. Right here. Yeah, we got it.
You got it, okay.
CPIU though went up 8,
Right.
really -5.
Well, before Emily gets started here, I just want to introduce this to make sure council's aware. We're gonna give a presentation on the downtown square design guidelines and the grant program that we proposed, taken through our downtown square commission to bring to this point here. These items are on your consent agenda this evening at 7 o'clock meeting. Items J is the resolution approving the downtown design guidelines, excuse me. And then K is approving the 2023 grant program. And I think Emily might explain this a little bit, but the design guidelines are kind of meant to be the living document that's going to live hopefully forever, with some amendments along the way. Grant program is just those funds that we have allocated for that. So I'm gonna hand it off to Emily because she's done most of the work. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that this is coming forward at your agenda here later this evening. Thanks.
Let's go ahead and get started. Program was implemented to help building owners revitalize and refresh the appearance of their businesses. And really attract people to. This program consisted of a grant and loan opportunity, which allowed applicants to receive up to 25,000 in grant funding and up to 25,000 in zero interest loans. Eligible projects included improvements to the exterior appearance of the buildings, including windows, door replacements, demolition of non-approved building materials, and masonry renovation. So this map shows properties that were eligible for the grant funding. This planning boundary included all 8 blocks that surround the courthouse. And this shows the financial offered to the properties within that area. This shows, so projects that had an anticipated cost of 5,000 or less were not eligible to participate in the program. Projects with a higher anticipated cost were allocated higher percentages of grant funding. So if an FI wanted to do a simple door replacement that costed around 5,000, the maximum amount of grant funding that they would be eligible for would be 10% of the project, granting them a $500 grant. Likewise, if they were to do a more complex project that was a little more nuanced, such as a storefront design, if their anticipated cost was 50,000, they would be eligible for a grant covering around 50% of those costs. Any project that was over that 50%, the property owner would be eligible for those costs. So here are some examples of properties that participated in the program. 113 East Salem did some improvements, including replacing the canopy, reconstructing their roof with a finished ceiling and soffit, and they also replaced the windows, the doors, and did some tuck pointing. So the construction cost for this project was approximately $72,300, and resulted in a property valuation increase of about 105% between 2010 and 2020. Another example, 115 North Buxton. This project included a renovated storefront with a new door and windows and a roof replacement. This project costed approximately $62,800 and resulted in a property valuation increase of 65%. And then the last example I have is 219 West Salem, whose work included demolition of several walls, framing and masonry work, new doorways and windows, as well as fresh paint. This project, we were unable to find the exact cost. However, they did qualify for the maximum grant and loan program or for loan funding. So it could be assumed that this project costed over 50,000. The valuation for this property increased by 412% between 2012 and 2022. So when comparing the valuations received by Warren County's Assessor's Office, the data shows us that the total valuation increase for the properties participating in the program doubled than those valuation increases for properties not participating in the program. For those participating in the program, valuations had increased by 40%. Those who opted out saw a valuation increase of around 23%. And it's not included on here, but there were around 25 programs. So now that we have gone over the previous program that launched in 2010, we can begin to discuss the drafted program that would be set to launch in 2023 if approved. Before going into the program, we will talk about the downtown design guidelines that have been drafted alongside the proposed grant program. The design guidelines are meant to articulate a vision for the downtown area, but is important to note that it's also meant to serve in its current capacity as an educational and planning tool for business owners and their design professionals when they're seeking to make improvements. So this is done by, instead of dictating solutions, defining a range of appropriate solutions to a variety of design issues that inherently come when you own a historic property or property within a downtown area. So the downtown design guidelines has identified 3 draft goals. The first one is to create a unified design for buildings within the downtown area while preserving authenticity and variety of buildings. The second is to enhance visual appeal and aesthetics. And the last is to promote tourism and activity within the square. In addition to these goals, the document outlines the following mission statement, which reads, "Town Square intends on maintaining its unique and authentic character. while striving to become a destination where local businesses can thrive and people of all ages and celebrate. The following map shows a proposed planning boundary for the downtown square, which includes the original 8 blocks around the county courthouse, but also transitional areas that are meant to act as a transition point when individuals enter or exit the square. These areas are identified as having an economic impact and interest to the downtown area, though they're located outside of those 8 blocks. Properties that would be applying to the grant funding program would need to be located within either of these areas to be eligible for funding. So the downtown design guidelines encourages a variety of things, including an open concept storefront, which maximizes window space. That really emphasizes that hometown pedestrian feel of the downtown area. And in situations where an open concept plan might not make the most sense, whether that's the established use or just property owner sentiments, it encourages using alternative measures such as incorporating blinds or window shades. The document also encourages incorporating accessories that are designed for outdoor usage. So that includes objects, furniture, such as like outdoor seating, dining areas, heaters, planters, and umbrellas, and really emphasizing that they're meant to be for the outdoor space, but also that they're generally of a good aesthetic and design. The document also encourages promoting well-designed, high-quality signage to create a welcoming feel and promote commerce activity in the downtown area, as well as an expansion of placemaking initiatives and public art opportunities that incorporate art, murals, and other improvements. And it discourages inconsistencies between building heights, setbacks, and non-compatible building materials. So the example to the left shows a building that's in Ottumwa's downtown area, where the setbacks aren't consistent with the two that it's sandwiched in between. And the one to the right shows building materials that are typical for residential buildings that would be generally considered inappropriate for a true downtown area. So lastly, we can the application process that is proposed. Generally, there are 4 steps for the application process. The first being to apply for the program. So the applicants will be required to submit attachments to their applications that would be relevant to the scope of work that they're conducting. So for example, a facade plan would be required if exterior work is proposed, or building plans would be required if they're doing any interior work. We would also require photographs of facades and interiors just to show the current conditions. An itemized project budget would also be required just to show what costs they're anticipating as part of the project, and whether or not they've thought about private investment to go back. And then lastly, we would also require a written narrative portion, which generally explains the project, the current physical conditions of the building, the appearances, and how the project really executes the program downtown design guidelines. Staff at this point would serve as a resource to applicants. So we would coordinate webinars and meetings to discuss the program and how to apply, as well as answer questions from applicants. Staff would also connect applicants to additional funding opportunities related to the project and provide support where appropriate. And so at the end of the downtown design guidelines, there's a list of many potential funding opportunities. And so those are the outside funding opportunities that we would connect them to. After submitting a complete application, staff would review and provide a recommendation on scoring to the Downtown Square Commission, as well as generate a staff report. And then the Downtown Square Commission would review the application in a public meeting and provide a recommended decision to the city council for their final decision. So this shows what that scoring rubric looks like. The scoring rubric is meant to essentially be a scoring guide based off of each applicant that we receive. It has multiple categories. You can receive 1, 2, or 3 based off the category. A minimum score of 15 points would be required for each application in order for them to be considered as part of the for the funding. So with that,
Sorry, what'd you say the minimum score was, Emily? I apologize.
sorry, what was that?
What'd you say the minimum score would be, would have to be?
15 points to be considered, and then anything above that
Okay,
rank.
okay, thank you.
I don't know, Charlie.
No, I don't have anything to add. I just want to be here in case there's any questions.
I was just wondering, how do property owners find out about this opportunity? Do they receive letters or?
So we've got an email list that when we were part of the downtown project, we were sending off every week. I think we plan on utilizing that as much as we can, utilizing social media and everything that pushed it out. I don't think there was an intention from us to really send out individual letters to property owners or anything like that, but we'll do what we can. Emily can also speak to this, but she's done a really good job of actually going door to door throughout the square, and letting them about it. So I think pretty much everybody's aware that this is coming.
I know downtown's merchant group.
Right.
Yeah,
They talked about it when I gone to their door. They're like, "Oh, I've heard about this."
that's good.
Oh, okay, good. And we also have a press release prepared. So
Do you anticipate having some properties that you are prioritizing to encourage or?
Not necessarily, and I think we've looked at some that I think, we wish, we hope that would, but I think we'll.
So as staff, we would absolutely treat everybody the same. You as elected leaders, more than welcome to.
Okay. That's fine. Because I'm assuming if they've taken advantage in the past, that doesn't hold them back from being able to do something going forward. Okay.
You may have already said this, but you said previously in 2010, there was like a graduation of how much for the loan, how much for the grant. Is it basically gonna be the same
No.
tier?
So one thing we did with this is a lot of internal discussion that we had. We have 125,000 earmarked towards this program that was approved in the budget last year. What we don't know is what the feedback is going to be on that. So, we could have 2 people apply for $5,000 and the job's really easy, or we could have 50 people apply for that pot, and we have to go through the scoring rubric to figure out what prioritizes out, what doesn't. So we wanted to use that scoring rubric to really kind of figure out where our priority or best applications are, where we should be putting the most funding in. And we weren't going to, this isn't to stop a business owner from possibly, or property owner from going to a bank and getting a loan, but we weren't working that as part of this. And really, I think the main reason, and Emily touched on this in her presentation, was we saw in 2010, when the city invested money into these projects, we saw a pretty big kickback in property tax value that was coming out of that. So we know the money that we are putting into this is going to pay dividends off in the future. So because of that, we didn't want to incorporate the loan in there. But again, that's not to stop a property owner from working with their bank to maximize the amount of funding towards the project.
Go ahead.
If I remember correctly, I was on council when we did that. The issue was that we didn't want all the money to go to one particular project. Wanted to be able to spread it out for the very reason you're talking about, because, let's spread it out among as many as we possibly can and do that. We're obviously not offering a 0% interest loan, but that was also a pretty good draw for people to do that.
Yeah.
Piggyback off of that, because while you set it in place, then I came in and we basically facilitated for years. And I know that the reason I asked the question I asked was there were properties that I think you guys were, and when you put that together, were hoping to take advantage that didn't. So and it took them a while to get through that process to be able to do that. So that's the only reason I was just from history here as to what we saw when it started before. So, and it was, I think it was great. That was, I mean, I think you guys had to respond basically from that building collapsing
Yes.
because of the lack of people taking care of the buildings, and that's kind of all of our, while those are privately owned buildings, it is kind of our infrastructure in the middle of our town. So we want to make sure it's taken care of. So.
Said there was 25 participants before. Do you recall, or do your documents say how many people had applied and didn't meet the criteria before?
I-
I don't think there was. I think you pretty much, if you asked for it.
You got something.
Got something.
And is
Yeah.
there a
Unless it
maximum
was less than
number
5,000.
to
Yes.
apply, or is it just?
We didn't set a cap on that. Like I said, it's really gonna come down to that. We're gonna have to go through the applications. So.
Do you know if there are any of those loans still outstanding on any of those? Cause it's been 13 years.
Yeah, we have some that are wrapping.
Okay.
We have two of Peoples, City State is pretty much up, and then a couple at True Bank, so there's a few that are still out there.
I think if I remember it, because there was a sunset date on it, but we extended it because we wanted, there was some interest, I think, in some of those properties. So
I think it was a 10-year sunset. on it.
Yeah,
Something like
not even been that long.
The ones that are still outstanding are those businesses currently still in operation.
Yeah. Rouse and that.
Makes sense. I think it's a great program. You've given the numbers to show that it's a
Really helpful.
Yeah, the numbers really showed us a lot. I know we met internally with Ben and Andy about a month ago, I think, on this, and that's one thing that we kind of want to get together. And when for the numbers I saw, I was shocked at how well they've done. So it just proves that this is a really good program.
And I think where West Hill Brewery is probably, and the old Hotel Warren are probably two examples of probably where it's really impacted, made a big difference too.
Yeah, I would agree.
That hotel used to be.
Body shots.
As a kid, you used to walk around.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 3, discussion regarding upcoming agenda items. Then the regular January 17th city council meeting at 7 p.m. If there are no questions, we will break back at 7. All right, no questions.
Right, okay.
It's like a grill.
We gotta-
Green's good, right? 2023, we need to rise for the pledge of allegiance. This full house, I'm nervous. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
now, would you call roll?
Councilmember Hewlin. Here. Parker,
Present.
Selby,
Here.
Schroeder. Beach.
Here.
Richardson,
Present.
Mayor Erickson.
Present. We will now. Office. We will begin with our fire captains. Will be first Cross, second Eric Wallace, and then third Thad White. After I do all the firefighters, we will, fire captains, I apologize. We will come together and take one picture of the newspaper, and then we will move on to the police, which will be Lieutenant Rick Largess and Lieutenant Justin Keller. So we'll start with Fire Captain Chuck Cross, if you will come forward. Over here in the middle. We'll go this way. You know what? Usually I'm on that side, so we'll go this way. I like it. I'll be raising your right hand and repeat after me. I, Chuck Cross,
I, Chuck Cross,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear,
that I will support the Constitution
support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties of a fire captain
discharge all the duties of a fire captain
of the City of Indianola, Iowa,
of the City of Indianola, Iowa,
as now or hereafter
as now or hereafter
required by law.
required by law.
Congratulations. To Eric Wallace. Guess we're going this way now. All right, I'll have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Eric Wallace,
Eric Wallace,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution of
of the United States
the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties of a fire captain
discharge all the duties of a fire captain
of the City of Indianola, Iowa,
of the City of Indianola, Iowa,
as now or hereafter
as now and hereafter.
required by law. Congratulations. Fire Captain Thad White. I will have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Thad White,
I, Thad White,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully, impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties
of a fire captain
of a fire captain
of the City of Indianola,
of the City of Indianola,
Iowa,
Iowa,
as now or hereafter
as now and hereafter
required by law.
required by law.
That work. Thank you. All right, we will have Lieutenant Rick Largess. Is it weird to like have to go to work in a few hours, right? So
Right,
big
yeah.
change.
Big change.
All right, I'll have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Rick Largess,
I, Rick Largess,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
Constitution of the State of Iowa.
and I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties
of a fire captain
Oh.
Wow. Yeah, back there. Has now. Required. So don't. We'll get you a new one.
Okay.
Shift tomorrow. And congratulations. It's pretty great. Lucky for Chief G, he's getting 2 new fire captains. I'll have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Justin Keller,
I, Justin Keller,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties
of a police lieutenant
of a police lieutenant
of the City of Indianola, Iowa,
of the City of Indianola, Iowa,
as now or hereafter
as now or hereafter
required by law.
required by law.
Congratulations.
Just need to make sure.
You do a better job. Thank you. Where's Kevin?
I can step out if any of your families want to take pictures. There's two. All right, we will take the 2 officers. Yeah, wait, what shift are we putting them on? Congratulations, Rob Hawkins. I'll stand in.
Thank you.
No. He's not really. Well, thank you guys. Congratulations. I told your wife that, yeah. You have the car bed tonight. Go there and take it. Little meetings. So. Might have come up a little bit. Oh, yeah, definitely gonna get out of the way.
Everybody drives.
That's a nice picture.
Step ladder.
Never stop, do they?
Kelly, maybe we should have had your daughter give us a demonstration of how she can get out of the. She did a big mess.
She's pretty good at
It was pretty good.
Fine.
I'm sure she would love this attention, but have an officer in the back, her newest little part to add to, and so much hair, Nicole. Can we see that baby? I'm sure she's thrilled. Oh my God, beautiful. Chair. Congratulations, and thank you all for coming. All right, we'll move on. We have a couple proclamations this evening. We'll let people filter out. And then on that. Not as intimidating anymore. Ryan and Largest could be like twins of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wasn't it?
Why he does training. Very fortunate to have all those.
Very fortunate and very excited about all of those promotions and congratulations to both of our chiefs on all of that. So we will move on. We have a proclamation, this Prevention Month, this was brought to my attention by Ron Heidemann of the Rotary Club. And so we are excited to do this. And I apologize, this was not at the first meeting as I was gone. So this is for the month of January. Whereas the United States was found upon the principle that all people are created with the inalienable right to freedom and added the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, making slavery illegal. And whereas slavery within the United States today is the most often found in the form of forced labor and sex trafficking, which weakens our social fabric, increases violence and organized crime, and debases our humanity. And whereas this horrendous crime is found within our own community. And whereas the Rotary Club of Indianola is working towards the abolishment of all forms of human trafficking through education, volunteerism, advocacy, and collaboration. And whereas even though the awareness of this crime is growing, human trafficking continues to go unreported due to its isolated nature, the misunderstanding of its definition, and the lack of awareness about its indicators. And whereas increased community education on how to identify victims of human trafficking, along with increased knowledge of local resources and services for those affected by these criminal actions, can help restore freedom and dignity to identified survivors, as well as help diminish the number of future victims. And whereas every business, community organization, faith community, family, and individual can make a difference by choosing products that are not made by forced labor, by working to protect our young people from sexual exploitation, by addressing the problem of internet sex trafficking and pornography, and by becoming more aware of the problem and possible solutions. And now, therefore, I, Stephanie Erickson, Mayor of the City of Indianola, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2023 as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and encourage all residents to become more informed on this growing problem, to be vigilant and report suspicious activities, and to work towards solutions to end trafficking in all of its forms in our community. If you see something that doesn't look right, take action and call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. In witness therefore of, I unto set my hand and have caused the seal of the City of Indianola, Iowa to be affixed the 17th day of January 2023. We'll have Ron come, I'll give him a copy of this, and Ron come forward and the picture. And thank you, Ron. I know I have several other Rotary members in the room. Ben is a Rotary member. Andy, are you?
No, I'm with the line.
Different group. Yeah.
Ben and Amy.
And Amy Duncan. Hey, Duncan, Google proclamations tonight. It's a big night for you. All right. You want us to stand in?
It's up to you.
Handy and we can sure.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a big picture night, I guess. Thank
Thank
you
you.
everyone, so much. Nice meeting you.
Nice
Thank
meeting you.
There you go.
Nobody's going here. All right, so we will move on now to our next proclamation, which is proclamation for George Washington Carver Day. This was brought to my attention by Amy Duncan and I'm gonna screw it up. Tisha Carter Smith from Simpson. So thank you so much. I think this is very important and we'll be sharing that information, but there's a number of activities on February 1st in recognition of George Washington Carver. Whereas George Washington Carver was born into slavery in Diamond, Missouri around 1864 and subsequently became a free child in 1865. And whereas he sought out education graduating from high school in Minneapolis, Kansas, and then was refused admittance to Highland College in Kansas because he was Black. And whereas he then traveled to Winterset, Iowa, and then walked to Indianola, where he enrolled at Simpson College in 1890, becoming a friend of the college and community. And whereas he studied art at Simpson until 1891, when he was transferred to Iowa State Agricultural College, where he became the first Black man to earn a Bachelor's of Agriculture in 1894 and a Master's of Agriculture in 1896. And whereas then became the director of the agricultural school at Tuskegee University in Alabama, where he research-led Southern farmers to better soil management, crop production techniques, and new uses for crops such as peanuts, soybeans, and sweet potatoes. And whereas he later returned to Indianola to receive an honorary degree and declared that at Simpson College, the people there made me believe I was a human being. And whereas Governor Tim Reynolds has declared February 1st as George Washington Carver Day across Iowa. And I, Stephanie Erickson, Mayor of Indianola, declare Wednesday, February 1st, George Washington Carver Day in Indianola to be recognized with tours, events, and conversations about Carver's legacy in our community and around the world. In witness thereof, I have unto set my hand and have caused the seal of the Indianola, Iowa to be affixed the 17th day of January 2023. Thank you, Amy, and that will you guys come forward. Amy, I'm sure you want to be in this picture. So Amy's in the back. I've been on this side. I don't know. I'm excited to be on this side. Oh, good. See?
Pressure.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you February 1st at Simpson. You.
I'm so happy.
There used to be a small building behind.
This conversation.
There was a house that's no longer there where the parking lot is behind the Pi Phi House, in Simpson. There was a small building there that had a garage there. There used to be an alleyway through there. And that garage was where Carver lived for a short period of time and took in wash and did other things to make ends meet. So it's kind of interesting, but that building is no longer there. I wish it could have been preserved, but it got torn down.
It is preserved. It's within the Carver building out the historical.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's why
Well,
the
I know.
Historical Society need more land, because we keep having all these great people from Indianola, right?
I
So,
mean, we're given things like that and have no place to put them and.
Very cool.
great.
Yeah,
I did not know that actually got put out there. I don't know.
yeah, it did.
Yeah,
My grandson moved it out there, but
very cool. Very cool.
they built the building around it. Built the Carver.
All right, we'll move on to item number 6, which is public comment. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to come forward and discuss something not on the agenda, now is the time.
Hi, my name is Elodie Opstead, 510 West Ashland Avenue. I am here on behalf of the resolution for approving the 2023 downtown facade and interior improvement program. I'm speaking to that. So actually, I'm here on behalf of the Warren County Preservation Commission, a certified local government program which is qualified to support preserving our county's irreplaceable historic character. Counties and individual cities qualify for this designation, and there are about 90 certified programs in Iowa. The Warren County Preservation Commission supports the Indianola Facade Program to revitalize our downtown business district and want to encourage the Downtown Commission and City Council to take next steps towards preserving the character of the downtown. Our commission has spoken to the Downtown Merchants Group as well as the Downtown Commission about identifying an historical district, which is a far less arduous process than filing for the National Register of Historic Places. We recently followed up with the Indianola Downtown Commission regarding providing a list of broad steps, next steps towards organizing a designated historic district in downtown Indianola. And we, the commission, are prepared to support and contribute towards that effort. Besides the historical significance of the downtown district, there are economic, cultural, and educational benefits maintaining the integrity and appearance of our downtown structures. I think that's obvious to you all. It's just not formally organized. Project to identify and define and have guidelines around an Indianola historic district would make what we all know and believe tangible and real. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Anyone else? Anything? If not, we will move on to item 7, which is the consent agenda. Are there any items that? There ones? All right, can I get a,
Very good.
oh, first and second motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item B?
So moved. Second.
You,
I have the city manager give
Go
a
ahead.
report on some of those things, if you would, please.
You bet. A resolution establishing or setting a hearing for the property taxes for the fiscal year 24 budget. Several liquor licenses being renewed. A normal pay request for the WRRF project. You have a change order for the adding of gravel on the shoulder of the Summercrest Trail. Change order is approximately $2,000 there. We do have another change order and payment application for the Boston Avenue project. That's a negative change order of 66,000, and we do really appreciate the partnership that we have both with Snyder and with our partners in the construction. We have an annual report from the Planning and Zoning Commission that was provided to the council in the packet. The downtown design guidelines that were presented earlier by Emily so very well are in there, and as well as the facade grant program for the council to consider. There are 3 easements that we're trying to acquire for the Indianola Industrial Park 3 infrastructure project. We are amending the sustainability committee size from 9 down to 7 at their request, as well as expanding the boundary to a 2-mile, the 2-mile boundary instead of just the already growth area. It's a second reading for the Warren County Historic Society and the sale of the property to them. Their consideration for the zoning change from C2 to R2 for a parcel in town that's contiguous to other parcels of the same zone. Third consideration of the sanitary sewer system pertaining to the servicing of customers outside of city limit, and then 2 waivers of lots of survey that are in that 2-mile range. Any questions?
absolutely.
Really for coming and making those comments. I appreciate that we don't always get to hear support. So when we make change, and I appreciate that. I do. I also want to thank staff for putting this together. I think this facade program is kind of that next step. Where I started years ago now, I'm on council, and where we are now with the square is phenomenal. And again, not everybody has it, but my vision's been all along that that's an entertainment and retail district that's mostly pedestrian, and this kind of blows right into that. So thank you, staff, for doing that. Thank you for bringing that forward with the Warren County Preservation Society. So I'm looking forward to the future. So thank you.
And I did stammer Absolute Concrete's name. I don't know why. Escaped my mind there just for a second, but they were great partners in that.
I think our staff deserves a lot of work credit on that as well, as you mentioned, and I think that's great that we put up with a compromise on a liquidated damages as well as getting that project pretty well done, with the exception of sodding, I think, and grass. Take place in spring.
All right. Jackie?
Councilmember Blumen? Aye. Parker?
Aye.
Colby?
Aye.
Aye. Richardson?
Aye.
We'll move on back to item B, which is approval of claims. I need a first and second motion.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? Becky?
Councilmember Colby?
Aye.
Aye. Richardson?
Aye.
Blumen? Yes. Parker?
Aye.
Move into council reports. We have a Metro Advisory Committee report and Des Moines Partnership Legislative Event report from Councilmember Seaver.
SERPTA, or the MAC meeting, excuse me, I'm SERPTA coming up on Thursday, sorry about that, but the Metro Advisory Committee had a discussion on efforts by metro cities to address homeless populations. Lady by the name of Angie Arthur of Homer, Iowa, spoke, gave a lot of information about a number of how the pandemic and a few other things as well. That was an interesting bit of information as well. Jeff Burkus with Iowa's OCIO, which is a digital equity group within the state of Iowa, talked about learning how to use technology, and there's some things available for businesses as well as individuals if they want to get a hold of that group. It's OCIO, is the name of the group in the state of Iowa. They've got some things they're trying to get going, and thought that there's some good things in there about some of the technologies that are available to businesses as well as cities. There was an update on the MAC leadership elections and nominations, and that pretty well took care of that project or that particular meeting. I did go, city manager and I were at the legislative event for the Des Moines Partnership on Monday. I had a chance to talk to a number of state senators and legislators, particularly on the league issues, which we've kind of talked about a little bit with property tax issues and home rule and those kinds of things. Got some interesting conversations. Of course, at that point in time, it was news first day in the session. And so there was a lot of, oh yeah, we'll take a look at that and this and that, but we really have to keep our eye on the ball and see what's going on. So would just suggest that we keep chirping away on those kinds of things and talking to our local elected representatives on these things too. So my reports.
All right, thank you. Move on to appointment of council members to certain board commissions. They're provided. And are there any changes that anybody would like to make to those? Enough, I guess we'll keep them as are.
Thank you.
Thank you. I need a first and second motion on a resolution appointing the city of Indianola representation to the Des Moines Metro Planning Organization and Central Iowa Regional Transportation Planning Alliance.
So moved.
Any questions regarding that? Becky?
Councilmember Hewlin. Aye. Parker.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye.
Aye. Richardson.
Aye.
On to item B or D, I need a first and second motion on an appointment of Paige Wardell to serve on the Hometown Pride Committee for a term beginning immediately and ending July 1st, 2024.
Right.
You. Thank you. Discussion? All right, Jackie?
Councilmember Parker.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye.
Beach. Aye. Richardson.
Aye.
Hewlin. Aye.
Board page. On to item E, which is receive and file the December 2022 treasurer's report. First and second motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I need a first and second motion to receive and file the December 2022 EMS billing activity report.
So moved.
Okay.
Yeah, Ron, we just saw look at him.
I know, stop looking at me.
Are your numbers running, the claims you can't collect, still running 6 to 10%? Is that what you're seeing, or is it less than that? Yeah, pretty much.
It is, and we'll probably see an increase in that number just because of the bounces in it.
Hopefully, and that's, I'm assuming, all built into your charges and stuff, and maybe I'll take a look at that down too.
Questions? Thank you, Chief. Now we will, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to the mayor's report, a community update, as we just had the proclamation for Washington Carver Day. I will also be presenting that at Simpson. Time to be announced. I think around noon, we're gonna do it. One maybe. It's on our calendar, but there'll be an official reading, and there is a number of events that day. And then those events also will come into the square as well too. There's a number of things happening. We have 4 live displays on each corner. The square, I think the local vine is one, treasures, Anyone else know? Steve, I think you just forwarded it to me today, the 4 businesses that are on each corner.
Line treasurer sundry.
Yeah, so it'll be a great event. We have 3 Mayor's Youth Council members here tonight, Paige and Caitlin. Paige just wanted to stick around, I guess. So I was gonna let them go earlier. She stuck around a little longer, but Paige, Morgan, and Caitlin all here this evening. And we are doing a number of things at Mayor's Youth Council. We are actually going to be transitioning this year for our annual event this year. Instead of Bike Fest, we'll be doing a 5K to raise money for a local charitable organization here in town. And we're gonna have a great walk a mile in my shoes, where we're going to ask our department and our firefighters to walk in high heels. So pending no broken ankles. I mean, we probably want to keep our fire and EMS guys.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's a matter of finding large enough high heels at this point.
I like they make them.
But this is a great idea they came up with, and
Have to wear those.
right,
They look
well, you'll see. We have this Friday at the library is a Super Bowl, which is, I believe it's it's department heads along with myself, participating in that. I don't know if anyone else was, but it'll be a contest. I'm a very good cook. I don't intend on winning, but it's fun to participate. And then we have the Chamber's annual dinner coming up February 9th, as well as we do have the YMCA is kicking off their annual giving fundraiser at the end of the month. So excited about that. And that's it for me. Said I wasn't going to talk a lot tonight, but did go a little bit longer. We'll move into item B, and I need a first and second motion to approve the approval of Jess Tom to serve on the Veterans Memorial Building Commission for a term beginning immediately to fill a vacancy starting July 1st, 2025.
Fred?
Jackie?
Member Dolby,
Aye.
Pearson,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Welcome aboard, Jess. Moving on into public consideration, old business. Item number 1, the Village of Wesley Life Community. I need a first and second motion to open the public hearing regarding a request for the modification to the Village of Wesley Life Community Planned Unit Development. Jackie?
Member Dolby,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Are now in the public hearing.
Mayor, members of council, Charlie DeSalle, Community and Economic Development Director. Just want to give a quick update on this one. So the Planning and Zoning Commission did meet on this item on January 10th. However, they did remand this item to their January 24th meeting. In doing so, asking the applicant to make a few changes on their proposed PUD. So because of that, we did publish this public hearing notice. So it is our recommendation that the council allow anyone who is here to speak on this matter, and then leave the public hearing open and advise that the public hearing would be continued to the February 6th meeting. We do anticipate Planning and Zoning Commission rehearing this item on January 24th, and then hopefully at that point forwarding a recommendation up to the council. Any questions? Would be happy to answer them.
Did see that the village ward, owner rep, they have scheduled now a community meeting, it looks like.
Yeah, I think they were planning on doing that for Thursday, if I remember right. Last I heard, but I didn't see anything official on that.
January 19th at 10 a.m. at the village, which I think that will help a lot of some concerns. I think it's very exciting.
Can you talk to the modification a little bit, Charlie?
So the plan that they had, so what the PUD does is it essentially allows the applicant to build your own zoning district in a sense. They had some units that they were asking for a decreased setback on the north side of the property for a few reasons really, and it's because of the grade back there. And I think they felt that with the grade that you were gonna have kind of a visual separation from those units, but the neighborhood had some concerns with the reduced setbacks on that, so they asked them. They did ask to vary that, and then there was also some hope that we could get maybe a little bit of a landscape buffer between the existing, the existing properties and the proposed property. So Leslie's done most of that. As a matter of fact, we've got an updated from them today that showed most of the changes. A little bit different of change in concept that they originally had to.
What would that setback be then?
I'd have to, but I think it was going up to 30. It was originally 20 and they did bump it up to 30, which is what normally is required on a rear setback.
And they did, I watched that planning and zoning meeting, there was a lot of community input,
Yes.
which was, it's good to hear, but I mean, they did meet all the requirements that we set as a city from landscaping, correct?
Yes.
And then they were willing to put additional in there.
Yeah. So, and I think it's really important to note that with really what we're at right now is a concept. I mean, this modification that Wesley Life is looking at doing is going to take subdivision plats, site plans, things like that. So that we explained to the commission, this is kind of step one of what ultimately could be a 5, 6, 7 to 10 step process over the next 5 years. So this will be kind of the first time it comes to the council ultimately. Have this item in front of you, I would imagine multiple times over the next few years.
Wesley is the largest residential property tax.
They're the largest property tax contributor altogether, right?
So by holding the public meeting, keeping it open, I assume this expedites the process a little bit. Is that correct? Or is it?
So internally, we kind of, with the 2 planning and zoning commission meetings, we decided to make a change, which kind of bit us right away with how this one handled. But typically we've waited, tell planning and zoning commissions forward something on, and then we ask the council to set a public hearing. Then we have to publish 7 days ahead of time. So there's this timeline that we have to meet. So we tried to kind of get ahead of that this year and see how that worked out by asking the council, once we have a submitted application, to set that public hearing sooner, so we can then hit the next council meeting after. This is one of the first times it's not the first time in a long time we've had something remanded at the commission level, and it was the first time we made that change. So
Okay, I get it.
but yeah, just leaving it open, what it does, if you closed it, then we'd have to set up public hearing in the future, and you're probably adding a month to the process if you.
Right. Yep.
So,
They're ready to go, aren't they?
yeah, I think they're really pushing to kind of start a few things out there. Again, it's going to be a step process through the way, but I think they really want to be.
They built a really nice product. And the one thing that I really thought was interesting was their architect was talking about how the old model was built very institutionalized, and they are trying to change that to a more residential home look. I don't want to say the word modern because then we get a little, it's modern, but to bring it more to a homey environment, which will kind of change the whole look of the community. So I think that's exciting. Thanks, Charlie.
But again, just if anybody's in the audience, I don't know if they are, let's make sure that there isn't anybody. Here.
Absolutely.
Again, our recommendation is just to keep it open.
We have to do anything.
No, it's just you don't close it, it stays open.
Is there anyone that is in attendance? And I certainly, I listen to all of those homeowners and certainly want them to know we hear them. So I'm glad that Wesley's willing to sit down, do those community meetings with them and assure them they'll be good neighbors. All right, if there is no one here, I need a first and second motion to continue the public hearing to February 6th.
Don't need to do anything. Just as long as we don't
Okay,
close it, it stays open and we take it next time.
we'll leave that open then. Item number 2 is Missouri Valley. I need a first and second motion to open the public hearing regarding a request for approval of the Missouri Valley JTC planned unit development.
So moved as read.
Thank you.
Okay, really quick, I'll present on this one. I'm sorry.
Oh, Jackie.
Sheesh.
I apologize.
Nice one. I'm not the only one who messes up.
Member Dalby?
Aye.
Beach? Aye. Richardson?
Aye.
Hewlin? Aye. Parker?
Aye.
Okay, the council's aware where Missouri Valley is located at 1600 East Iowa. What you may not be aware of is where that 17th Street is stubbed in currently off Iowa. Missouri Valley bought the 50 acres of land east of 17th Street about a year ago, with the anticipation of adding a few things out there. As we've talked with Missouri Valley, we figured the best thing for this area would be is to do it as a planned unit development, rather than having kind of pockets of different zoning districts all over their property with what they intend to do. And I noticed that subject properties at 1600 East Iowa, they are asking for an amendment to a PUD development. It does propose an expansion of the existing trade school. And does also add a possible hotel, a possible restaurant, and then future office and industrial areas that could be sold off. Looking at their PUD concept again, and go back to the map, the current school is sitting down there on the bottom left-hand side. They show their pole yard just north of that, and then they intend to keep growing north with their current trade school on using that piece of ground over there. Now, if you go to the east side of 17th Street, what you'll see there is that orange area that's shown on the screen. They propose a restaurant to be located there. Just north of that in the blue area, they're proposing a hotel. And then from there on out, kind of some flex industrial, light industrial / office area that could be used out in that location. You may be aware of this. I know some of the existing council members, when we reviewed the site plan initially, Missouri Valley had a plan to build a dormitory kind of in the front of their facility that is located there. And if you've ever been out there, you can actually see where that pad site has been placed. I think as they've looked into that and what that would take, they've kind of now moved on to this hotel concept. And what the hotel concept for them would do is obviously they would be able to reserve rooms close to their facility, but then any access rooms that would be available on the weekdays and then into the weekends would then be opened up to the public. And as attachment that was included in your report, they did a whole market study for the hotel. And really what the market study showed was that the city of Indianola could actually absorb another hotel within this community based off what Missouri Valley's usage would be, but also based off what the current vacancy rates are at the existing hotels. So looking at this, what we wanted to do is kind of show how this works into our comprehensive plan. So the purple area that you see out there on the right-hand side of the screen, that kind of boxed area is Missouri Valley's property. The purple area is shown as industrial areas. And then that strip of red along Iowa Avenue is a community mixed use, which does allow for uses like a hotel and a restaurant that can kind of build the industrial park. This shows some of the bulk regulations that they're looking at. Really what we wanted to show you here is on the left side of the screen, you can see the bulk regulations required for both the C1 and the M1 zoning district, and then what they're requiring. What they're requiring in their PUD district is the most stringent of those requirements combined in those zoning districts. So they're not asking for any alleviation of any zoning district rules that we currently have in place. In fact, they're carrying some of those over to be more stringent than what the normal C1 zoning district would require. So with that, if there's any questions on the proposal, I'd be happy to answer them.
One question. So if we go back to that map, so the paving stopped.
Right at the entrance of Missouri Valley.
Okay, so then if they have to repave that, it will probably the southern house.
Oh, you're talking along Iowa? Where
Yeah,
yeah, just past her eastern property line is where it stops.
Okay, so she wouldn't have to hit that again if that goes into paving.
Nope.
Okay,
No.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't still on her property a little bit, but
Yeah,
it
it's
would
actually
be.
just a little bit past her
Good,
property,
okay.
It's barely past her property.
That's something we ever negotiate out with them since they're developing that they would, that road.
Missouri Valley? Yes, we could
Versus,
definitely do that, yeah.
versus trying to do the assessment role. I mean, I don't know, we don't want to obviously crush this. This is great. I think this would really be for the classic on weekends
Mhm.
when their guys aren't in there and.
Yep, nope, that's something, you know, as we've looked at the industrial park and we have this, obviously, once the industrial park develops out, you're gonna have that strip of 700-800 feet of unpaved right away that we do own. Kind of wanted to wait to get through this process with Missouri Valley before the city even talked about paving that road, but at some point we do need to get that connection made. And I think it's gonna be something as development comes forward, as Missouri Valley possibly sells off some of their land there for future development. At that point, it can be development driven.
Is there any conversation with the county? I know in the past years back, as far as paving all the way out to 150th. No.
Yes, so we haven't had any discussions with them on that. So currently our city limits go another 1/4 mile east of here. And we've got resident Jerry's Homes owns most of the ground along Iowa there. And that'll be again, another one that we'll look at when we did the East Iowa Ave paving project for Missouri Valley. One of the reasons we stopped where we did is because after that point, the grade starts to drop right there and the cost just increased after that. So it would be a bigger project than the previous one, but something we know that we have to look at in the future.
The hotel be a separate entity or is it tied to the school?
Nope, so they're proposing to having an actual private hotel company come in here and operate it. I think Missouri Valley and I don't think Robbie's here, so he can't speak. Last I knew, what they were planning on doing with both the hotel site and the restaurant site was they would build it, lease it back out to operators who wanted to operate both the restaurant and the hotel.
So would there be a tax base from it?
Yes.
The schools.
Yep, so we, the school itself is not taxed, but we did check with both county assessor and then Andy confirmed this as well too, but any use that is taking place that is for profit is automatically taxed. And it's a little bit more difficult for the assessor to figure it out, but I mean, for a hotel and a restaurant, it's pretty simple to figure out in the end.
On up.
Absolutely. Probably right. Live right there.
I don't know right now. Yeah, this is kind of step one for them. I haven't got time frame.
Thank you. Well, certainly, Polly, with you being right there, want to keep you in the know.
I want to know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And congratulations on retirement. Is there anyone else that's wishing to speak in the audience? Right. I need a first and second motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Councilmember Hewlin.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Selby.
Aye.
Beach. Aye. Richardson.
Aye.
B, I need a first and second motion on the first consideration of an ordinance approving a rezoning from light industrial M1 and agricultural A1 zoning district to a planned unit development zoning district for the land located at and adjacent to 1600 East Iowa Avenue and approving the Missouri Valley JATC planned unit development.
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Oh,
Councilmember Richardson.
Aye.
Hewlin.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
to item B, which is new business. I need a first and second motion on a resolution approving a major site plan application for a daycare center at 1010 North Jefferson Way.
So moved.
Okay.
Jackie, never mind, discussion. We're gonna go too quick here.
Just a short, quick presentation on this one. You'll remember we site plan for this one. Rear side of this, at 1010 North Jefferson Highway, or excuse me, yeah, North Jefferson Way. Just a tad over 5,000 square foot daycare facility that is looking at being located on the property. One thing to note on here is the proposed site plan does show possible future interconnection areas into the property, both to the north of here and the south of here, because of the existing grade that is currently in place on the north side. They cannot make that connection at this time, but when the property to the north develops, that would be something that we would hope would get done. And then if there is ever an agreement between this property owner and Walgreens on doing one to the south, they just showed a possible interconnection area on there as well. Complan supports this. Complan does show commercial out in this area. And with that, the Indianola Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval with the condition that should the lot to the north develop, the interconnected parking shall be implemented within this lot. So any questions, be happy to answer them.
So the interconnecting parking lot is with the 1006. That new business.
No, so it would be on the north side right there. So the top of that, where you're seeing that screen in that blue area, that's the north. So that property up there, it currently goes up to Kentucky, is vacant at this point. But if that were to ever develop, we would connect into this parking lot to kind of provide traffic flow through that site.
So now the only way to get there is off of Jefferson?
Yes, as it stands right now, yes.
Is there any concerns about trying to turn south out of there? Because in rush hour, traffic's gonna be backed up further than where that driveway is.
So we looked at that and I think overall, what we kind of landed on was at some point we hope to look at this whole area as far as connection, because that is a concern that both really AP even brought up through this process. So the good thing here is that that property where the Indianola Meat Locker used to be, and then that property along Kentucky, the property owner of this property that we're talking about has, I believe, an option to purchase that at this point in time. So if that ever all does develop out, we'd be working with the city on a few things there just because there's things that need to be done in there, but we would also discuss at that point in time, kind of combine the entrance and that could then funnel out to all of these properties.
Chief, do you have any issues with getting in there to daycare with childcare, EMS, anything along that line?
We've discussed some of that stuff with property owner in our meetings. Right now, it's been addressed.
Okay.
Speaking to the. We would hope finalize the sale on the adjoining property and then have, I mean, you wouldn't really call it a frontage road, 'cause it's kind of a bunch of things, but kind of, yeah, so
Service road.
In a sense, yep.
that would be dire
Be tough going and get in and out of there for a little while.
for a little bit, yeah. But it's very exciting. I mean, I think that's one of the things I read in a COVID study was that daycare's one of the like the most needed things right now.
I don't doubt it's needed. It's just concerned that we can get in there if something happens.
All right, any other questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Richardson.
Aye.
Lewin.
Aye.
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 We'll move on to item 11, other business and city managers report from Ben Reeves.
Great. Then we have representatives from IMU. And Chris, and I think Chris Longer is going to be giving the presentation on the report. Is that right?
We have a slideshow.
So I am Chris Longer. I'm the HR and Finance Director for Indianola Municipal Utilities, and I also have Planks, General Manager for Utility. And we are here tonight to present an overview of IMU's audited financial statements for fiscal year 22, which is June 30th, 22.
Having trouble with my computer as well.
Me too.
So was I.
I'm glad it wasn't just me.
I can't get into any.
Can't either. Looking him back there. Now we tell him. I did say before the meeting, and then that's why John said, that's why I download it. And I was like, note self.
I was in it.
Oh,
Wasn't
there we
having
go.
any issue
All right.
in the-
It was in.
Started coming.
Okay, so we'll start by looking at the utilities statement of net position here. So net position is the difference between our cash and assets and our accumulated depreciation and liabilities. And so you can see that IMU full net position increased approximately 1 million from 2021 to 2022. And that increase was primarily due to the net operating income in the electric utility. Next, we'll look at the utility statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Operating revenues increased by 6.8% to almost 23.7 million there in 2022. Operating expenses remained very stable from fiscal year 21 to 22. That's in a 1% change there from year to year. The increase in operating revenues was driven mostly by the growth in our fiber utility services. The increase in operating expenses was also driven primarily by the fiber utility expansion. Next, we have a few utility highlights that are taken directly from our financial statement. However, there's a couple of corrections on the slide, and I'll point those out as we go through. I haven't already recognized them. So for the electric utility,
Experienced an increase in operating revenues of 4.46% in fiscal year 22, while operating expenses decreased by 3.42%. So the net position of the electric utility increased approximately $2.5 million in 2022 compared to approximately $1.1 million in the previous year. The water utility experienced an increase in operating revenues of about 1.27% in fiscal year 22, while operating expenses increased by 9.8% from the prior year. The net position of the water utility increased by approximately 470,000, not million. That's all on the bubble.
You're not hard.
There that I'd like. Compared to approximately 550,000 in. And then our fiber utility experienced an increase in operating revenues of about 21.63% to 4.2 million in fiscal year 22 as a result of our continued scale up with this new utility service and bringing on new subscribers. Operating expenses increased also by 6.2% from the prior year. And the fiber utility reported an increase in net position of approximately 460,000 in fiscal year 22 compared to a net loss, not a new loss, a net loss of approximately 84,000 in the prior year. So this is very high level summarized presentation from our audited financial statements. Anybody is interested in delving into the detail and looking at the actual complete financial statement that is available on the auditor state website.
Chris, were there any concerns or kudos, I guess, pointed out sometimes in audits, they give you well done, and sometimes they give you things you need to work on, or any of those that were cited in the audit?
We had no comment this year, so.
Cool.
Good job. Congratulations.
Is this your second one?
This is our third with
Third?
10 minutes.
Okay.
Very good.
With that?
Wonder, like I need to use last names here.
Yes, you do. Yeah. Chris is in the utilities.
Ben asked me one time, does everyone refer to Chris as Christy? I was like,
Thank you.
thank you.
Just to give an introduction, so Chris and I and Lori as well. Our internal staffs on both sides have really been working on trying to create a partnership to understand our costs and how they should be going forward in the relationship so that we can continue to build trust between our two organizations and ultimately serve the residents of our community. That's the goal. It's very strange for me coming in to seeing a city somewhat divided, but in all reality, we are one organization serving our residents. And if we approach it that way, we can give each other the benefit of the doubt and ensure that we're working towards the common good. So Chris and I have been really talking about cost allocations and specifically when it comes to the collection costs or utility billing. So he's going to give a quick presentation, and we've been playing with some spreadsheets. I can bring a spreadsheet up that kind of shows different methodologies that could be used. But in the end, it's our goal just to find a middle ground that really works for both of us.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for all your work. And that's probably good to point out here. The dollars that we're talking about separating here or spreading or changing, they won't vary. So when it comes down to the, real true taxpayer or ratepayer costs, there's such a preponderance of overlap. These are the same costs for the same people. It's just we're seeking a little different methodology for spreading that cost and a consideration of a more equitable distribution. So I'll take a look at our current status. So this is our fiscal year 2023 budget for the Utility Services Department. Fiber, water, and electric, obviously, we've come up with some methodology to divide those that we feel is equitable. There is a charge to the city of approximately 94,000 right now. The city has made the determination how to spread those out between sewer, stormwater, and recycling. So, you know, any that we can get into in a little more detail. As you look at this, I think, you know, down at the bottom is kind of the, I'll draw your attention there. The current city charges of 94,000 represent 13% of that budget, and the current charges that are assessed to or paid for by IMU ratepayers are 636,000 or 87%. Given there's such a high overlap between water and sewer, that seems a disproportionate. So I've proposed, and we've been speaking with Ben about a couple of methodologies. Certainly nothing here is official or finalized. I'll talk through some of this. Proposal number one is kind of a two-pronged proposal. Total revenues and equal distribution. I did have number of customers, but in talking with Ben, we kind of simplified it and said an equal distribution. So we've got total revenues, kind of a wherewithal to pay, if that makes sense to everyone. Larger departments, larger funds have more ability to cover cost, as well as a equal distribution cost. And that's representing, I think importantly, that there's some expenditures, and I'll kind of mention like postage. When a customer has 6 services and you pay the approximately $1.25 to get that bill out in the mail, it does benefit all the utilities equally. As one is a little more expensive or might have a little more higher charge or less charge, if not for that bill going out, everyone else would have it to do it themselves. So by combining those services, we're recognizing significant cost saving. But with that cost savings, I think comes a need to separate out those equal benefits. So I have proposed some weighting factors here, and you'll see that I've got the 66-34 highlighted. We'll get a little bit further into that in a second, but you know, showing some variety here between the 50-50 and the 70-25. I got the 60-40 split, 70-30 split. You'll see some departments, you know, I'll point out sewer, between this distribution of 15.64% at 50-50 and 15.13% at 75-25. You know, when there's very little change there because, you know, of the volume kind of matches the 1/6 share quite nicely. So, you know, certainly there's some, I think, room for discussion. We won't have any perfect analysis here. I think you can poke some holes in this, but we're seeking something that is close enough to perfect, but I don't think we'll ever get perfect. Where I started focusing in on 66-33% comes with our budget. This is the proposed fiscal year 24 budget. This isn't official or final at this point, but we got some highlighted amounts that really, you know, you go down the education and training. I think when our staff go to some of the educational opportunities from our software vendor, anybody that's dealing with it does benefit. So, you know, I think we need to recognize that there's a distributed benefit across there, as well as utilities. If we or telephone, if we had one utility or 6 utility, our cost for electricity in that building would be the same. So again, I won't go into detail on all of these, but you know, functionally, that group of highlighted stuff, we're considering fixed expenses, and you know, should be borne by all services. Off to the right, I've got the totals and some percentages. For fiscal year 24, those fixed expense or the highlighted expenses are 238,000, which represent 37% of that budget. We talked about Again, why maybe to choose one of those distributional methodologies or weighting methodologies over the other one. This is kind of where we're honing in on what might be a fair distribution of those fixed expenses. They represent about 37% of the budget. We're used 34 really for expediency. The difference between those two is probably not enough to get concerned about. And also pointed out that at the 34% fixed spread level, that's not including anybody to operate. And so at your option, we put in the utility services supervisor salary that represents 12% of the budget, as well as, because one person probably can't run it by themselves, a utility services rep whose salary represents 8%. So while again, our focus or attention's on that 34% number, which is represented by the 37% here, I think you could easily make a convincing argument for something higher. Again, the higher those fixed cost spreads, I guess the more favorable it is to IMU and less favorable it is to the city. So our request at 34% does represent, I think, a good compromise. Which comes into the, what all that would mean for math. Our proposal results for our year 2024 budget, again, using a 33% weighting methodology would come out a little different. I won't bore you with maybe the details of who's paying what across the board there, but really what we're focused on at IMU is that arrives at a city contribution of 185,000 or 29%, where IMU customers are contributing the almost 71%. And I think, while not perfect, I think that gets us a long way in creating a little bit of cost equity between our various utility funds. And, representing that the three utilities, that the city runs, the recycling, stormwater, and sewer, or the fiber, electric, and water, that the utility runs, IMU still taking the vast preponderance of those costs into consideration. Now, I just walked
What was the current one? What are we at currently? You go back to that.
15.
480.
Okay, and so is this basically all due to the software that you guys are running? Is that what this is about?
No, there are some software maintenance costs in here, but I think
With the training and all that?
the training is primarily from the software vendors. We want good operators, and so.
Right, but the reason you guys had to switch to that was because of the fiber. You bringing the fiber on, that really doesn't have an effect too. But for all of our processes, so, but anyway, so just wanted to point that out, I guess.
Yeah, and again, perfect is the enemy of good, or good is the enemy of perfect. I think, there's some, no matter what we do, you'll be able to poke holes in it. We're just looking for a more equitable direction. So I walked everyone through a, perhaps complicated, we're talking weighting averages, what is fixed, what is this? Another alternative that really hadn't been vetted through Ben, but I do like that it for consideration is my proposal number 2. And that is eliminating some of those fixed cost considerations. But what the big change here is we're taking out the cost of goods sold, which represent a non-optional pass-through cost. And we're doing that for electric and recycling. And I think it's important to note those two funds in order to provide service. There's a large cost for we can full trucks or 4 months guys show up at the beginning of the day. We have to have our wholesale power contract, which represents electric availability. I think it's easy to point to the electric department and say, boy, with $15.7 million, they got a lot of revenue. They can afford to cover a lot of cost. With one expense at $10.7 million, really what comes down to are what IMU can control or what our revenue, that we can do capital projects with or pay salaries and staff to do improvements is $5 million, which brings it a little more into parity with the other departments. We see that same kind of thing in recycling. There's no recycling staff per se. It is just some administrative cost on the top, as that is really just a pass-through cost without any functional wherewithal to pay or ability to generate. We did that same consideration on the recycling side. Now, I think there are some that maybe we could force to the fiber and, but what we're seeking here is taking the consideration of the major cost driver out of here. And if we split, taking those out, we split those just by a net revenue consideration. Those percentages arrive at that green box down at the bottom, relatively close to that other consideration of 28.6% and 71.4%. The math works out pretty similarly. Just looking for really any feedback, thoughts, or any other considerations. I know we probably won't be able to decide this today, and so I will extend an offer for anybody that has any specific questions that wants to go through some of the mechanics of what this looks like. I will make some time for you. Let me know, and I'll go through and answer any direct questions you have. So short of feedback, we got a couple important dates. IMU's public hearing is February 27th. So working backwards, we'd like to get our publication notice to February 7th for you, which giving us some time to process and incorporate whatever this decision may be into our budget. We'd like to have a decision approximately on the 27th of January, just for, purposes of transparency and be able to get that budget done and off to the appropriate parties. So with that, I'll entertain any questions, or certainly if you got some detailed questions, we can
Then if January 27th is when we would have to, is this something, we have to vote on this, right?
Oh, it's right here. Yeah, this is the first time, yeah. And that, so absolutely, this is your only meeting before the 27th, so. We would.
Probably have to call a special meeting if.
Well, but let me walk you through the process that I've been working on.
Okay.
I think it.
Can you send that information to us? The stuff you just showed?
The,
I have that.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I think you need to say Christie.
Christie, yes. I didn't specify.
So when Chris and I were originally going through it, this initial page that he shared is really what we went from. So this is what was paid in the prior year, and this is what the proposal is. And before I even really get into it too deeply at all, it's ultimately, we're talking about the same goal, which is $639,000 is paid for to process utility billing, regardless of how it's distributed. What the residents are paying for is the same. So that's really important for me, because whether it really, the concern is an allocation methodology that we agree upon and work in partnership on, as opposed to a negative impact on the residents themselves. Initially, when we started to get in and talk about it, my hope and goal was really that, okay, if we raise it over here in sewer and we lower it over here, then the net effect on the residents is the same and we're good to go. Ultimately, that I totally understand where IMU is coming from. They have some deficiencies in their water system that they want to build up their capital funds for. And so there's a real goal to raise some revenue distribute things a little bit differently. So the intent is not to drop water rates or power rates or anything like that commensurate with. So whatever change we make is really truly an increase. We do need to look at that differently. And it was hard for me, and it may be hard for you to look at percentages and go, what does that mean? How does that work? And so ultimately, this is the table.
Hang on, explain that again
So let me show.
with with the fact that they're trying to pocket money away for fixing the things in the water system. Is that what you're saying?
The goal is to get money into their CIP for
I
the.
understand that. Well, we did the same thing with our sewer system. Anyway, I'm not in favor of this, by the way, so.
Well, it's all fine because we do have deficiencies in the water system and and they are us and we are them. And so
I understand that, but we didn't ask for them to pay for parts of our sewer system either, so. It's basically a double. I mean, our payment is increasing by 2, so.
well, and this really gets down to the methodology.
What you want, bill an increase.
So. There we go. That's really what I'm getting at. Okay. All right, so there's different methodologies is what we're looking at. Let me walk you through that so you can get a better understanding. So the revenues that the IMU and the city collect today are $27 million. And when you look at that, if you take the total amount of revenue the amount of revenue per utility and divide it by the total of all, these are the percentages that are created. Okay. So one methodology so this is the current right here, and one methodology that could be followed is a revenue model, which is to say, it doesn't matter where the costs or the revenue is coming from. Every revenue is paying 2.32%. Every revenue, kind of like a merchant fee on a credit card, if every revenue was paying 2.32%, very easy to share, very understandable. And what would that do to the different line items? Well, it's a change of allocation. It's not a change of dollars. And so what does it do between the two of us? If we think of us as one entity, what does it do? Well, it would drop the cost of fiber. It would increase the cost of sewer. It would increase the cost of water. Excuse me, stormwater. It would significantly decrease the cost to water, because water is in this methodology that's currently being applied. Water is carrying the majority load of all utility billings. So this would solve that problem. It would increase it for electric because proportionally speaking, electric is not paying as much of a weight as it should compared to water under this methodology. And recycling, it would be a little bit of a savings. So what would that do? If we followed 100% revenue model, what it would do is the city would be paying $116,000 or a $21,000 increase or 22%. But very easy to sell and understand that every revenue is 2.32%. Another methodology that could be used is the flat approach or the fixed approach. And that is to say that if we take all the costs, the 639,000, we divide it by the 6 lines of business, the 6 utilities that we have. If you were to do it 100% on this methodology, it has a significant impact, which is to say that each utility is paying an equal share, $106,000. But what does it do? Fiber has a little bit of a decrease. Sewer has an increase. Stormwater has a significant increase. And then water and electric go down, and then recycling has a significant increase. To the extent of, if you look back at the amount of revenue you collect, 141,000, it cost you 106,000 to collect it. It's 31% of all your revenue is going to just collection methodology. So that's an extreme on the other end. What Chris and I are really talking to today is what is the ratio? To what extent is it revenue driven? To what extent is it fixed driven? And that's really where you come down to what would be a balanced approach. And it's trying to find that percentage. So if I put a 0 in here and I show that this is the revenue model. This is a 0% means there's no balance. 100% of the money is being divided and equally hitting on just a percentage of the revenue collection. If I put 100 in there, it goes the other way, and it's 100% fixed. That's the huge increases. The real question is, what is a reasonable overhead rate? Chris would articulate, and I think just did fairly well, that 37% is where I think Chris would like to see it come to. I would articulate that it's probably not that high, simply because of the fact that certain line items just can't carry that. When you're only bringing in $341,000 on recycling, you can't. So I haven't had the opportunity to vet proposal number 2 or really go through the numbers and understand it. But it really comes down to what is the right thing. So there's numbers all the way. I try to go, I look up industrial averages and what is your standard overhead rate, cost accounting, and there's really not a lot out there. Methodology is, you could say, on the low end, the pilot payments that are made from IMU to the city are 5%, and the same with franchise fees, 5%. So 5% turns into an increase from the city of $55,000. So it goes from 95 to up by $55,000, or a 57% increase. It's a 10%. 10% balance, that 10% is flat, and the rest then it goes up. It translates into the different numbers. So I put a spreadsheet together that you could play with and you could look at, because what we need to, in an ideal world, what I would really like to see, finding a methodology that we're solidified on and that we can use going forward. In an ideal world, what that would mean is that IMU would lower their rates, we would increase our rates, and the residents would have a 0 impact. That was what I would love. And then we just move forward currently, saying if we need to raise more money in water, then we raise more money in water. If we need to raise more money in sewer, we raise it in sewer. That seems to be the rest approach. What's difficult is when we're raising on one side and then capturing those, then we're truly increasing without decreasing anywhere else. And so we're trying to accomplish 2 things in a net, as opposed to let's fix an allocation and then let's raise rates. And so I completely understand where they're coming from and totally support that we need as a community to put more money into water and the water infrastructure. Its rates are arbitrarily low, and its infrastructure needs are very high, and putting capital dollars towards it is important, not just for IMU, but important for the city because they are owned by us, and important for the residents we serve because we need to have good infrastructure. What is that methodology? Where is that dollar amount? And how does it relate and go through? Well, that is a political decision, because it really comes down to how you're going to allocate those dollars. And where we're not decreasing at the same time, it really truly is an increase to the residents. So this is the table that really you can play with. If we went to the 33 or 34%, that gives the amount that they were originally looking for.
One change, where we're really focused on the what that fair share between city is and IMU is, we're not going to pretend like, this will be the perfect solution for us, and likely to make changes for too. So I'd just like to point out, if there's a particular line item of concern to you, developing or deciding on this methodology doesn't obligate you to charge that fixed level. You can move that around as you see fit, certainly.
Right. But at the end of the day, I'm concerned with this right here, to say that 12% of the revenues collected from recycling would be used for collection purposes. Even though dollar amount is lower, it's because we're collecting lower. And it goes back to the ability to pay. Water and sewer, you can see that there's a very large disparity between the 4 million that the city collects in sewer rates and the 2.5 million that the city, or the IMU collects in water rates. That really is illustrative to me that water rates do need to increase in order to put more money into CIP.
Are all these revenues based on rate payers generated dollars only, or is there grant money involved in, or this revenue is?
Total revenue from utility related payments.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, you get
Okay.
the cash collections from the billing system.
So do you think that sewer, when we talk about that 34%, you feel that we really take 34% of the time? I mean, because that's kind of how I look at it, is what takes the most time. And yes, there is a mutual benefit. It all goes on one bill that is a shared for everybody, but I mean, I think water in a high percentage, and I guess I'm just asking when we look at the allocation from that 34%.
Which 34%?
Well, isn't that what
It's the call.
final goal? Yeah.
So Chris and I had that conversation before, and Alicia's really tried to do a good job of tracking calls and looking at, well, if who's calling for what reason? And if you're calling to just pay your bill, that really hits all 6 lines, and that becomes a flat cost, right? But if you're calling because your recycling can is missing and you need a new recycling can, that's specific to recycling. Or if you're calling because you have a power bill, meter read, or water is overreading, or you can have individual, but it's hard to break those out on the fly because calls typically evolve to other issues.
Yeah, and it, you know, that call volume, I think, across the board, you know, where we thought we kind of developed a methodology. Saw something kind of surprising, that the vast majority of the calls are for mutual benefit. There's no specific driver. I think maybe that changes throughout the year. In May, you'll say, hey, why did my water and sewer go up? Well, were you watering your lawn or starting a garden? And July and August, when everyone. But the vast majority calls are, I want to pay, I want to make payment arrangements, or I'm having trouble paying, how can I get some help? And across the board, all of those, you know, non-specific make up between 90 and 95% of those calls. So it's tough to point to that and say, you know, this percentage of the calls belong with this department, because those logs don't bear those, you know, specific items out there. They really are largely just, hey, I want to pay, I want to make payment arrangements, general assistance type calls, compared with, you know, and a good example, this year we had Warren County had a boil order. We fielded a lot of calls, and it's tough to point to the water department and say, boy, you only got those calls because we own water. Those really were community benefit calls, and, you know, short of spreading it across everyone else, I'd feel hard pressed to point that to any one. There was no one fund that drove those calls, you know, just as an example. So,
How did we, maybe Ben or Chris, you can talk about this, when a lot of the personnel functions went to shared services in the 90s. Was it wasn't divided, was it divided equally, or was it just divided, or does anybody know? I guess that's the question. Have you gone back that far to find out?
when there was more shared, it started at 50.
And we evolved into, how did we get to where we are today? I guess that's the question. If it was a 50-50 share, I understand it's probably not an equal share if you go 50-50, but how did it?
It's challenging because when we were co-located and everything was together, they were also collecting for the police department. They're also collecting for recreation and whatnot. So it became, you know, this is, you know, accounts receivable in general. And so that's how the breakout really has taken place. So you come back politically, what are we looking at? Well, recycling, we typically are trying to encourage recycling. And so you're trying to get a flat dollar amount. You're trying to not raise that up. Storm drainage, we've raised recently because we're trying to build up the CIP. Sewer, we've raised significantly because we have the new sewer treatment plant online, and it's state of the art for the state of Iowa. So over time, we've seen a decrease in what the city is proportionally planned because things like accounts receivable for police and recreation are not longer no longer in there. But is the allocation methodology that's in place today fair in distributing it? Probably not. What? If it was just up to you and we were raising and lowering rates, then the impact on the residents is zero. So then we're okay. It's only because we're trying to do things at once that it becomes more politically driven, because you're raising one over here to create revenue over there instead of being really transparent about we're raising water because we need to raise water for this purpose. I'm all for fixing the allocation methodology going forward, because that doesn't impact the residents. 639 and 639, they're paying it yesterday, they're paying it. So that's the,
So the real question comes down to, what do you think is a fair allocation then? And I know that's a political question you're throwing back at us. But you know, I guess if they, what areas have they picked up, I guess, more than what we used to do or whatever, and what areas have we picked up where they haven't? So that'd be a good question, and where are we at in those allocations? So.
this is where I think we agree to disagree, but do so respectfully as colleagues. And that, you know, for me, it's really easy to say it's revenue driven. 2.32% of all revenue across the board, it's easy. Everyone can afford it based on it. But I can see from Chris's perspective, that makes power carry a huge load when recycling isn't paying very much at all. If you go to the 5% model, I would articulate that would probably be a reasonable overhead rate. Look at industrial averages, maybe you're closer to the 10% rate. I have something wrong with my spreadsheet.
The one that was 116,964.
That is the 100% revenue rate. So 2.32% of revenue, of all revenue. And that's a 22% increase. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not where they would like it.
My concern is if we're worried about helping water out, nobody was worried about helping sewer out. My point, I mean, it's just, and we've had to make adjustments in our rate and raised it for that reason, because we were focused on getting the thing done and moving forward. And we focused on that rather than considering with how could we get that to come out of somebody else's pocket. I feel like that's where we're at right here.
And also, yeah, like apartment operating margins. Full. Are they all efficiencies like that? That would be a concern.
My only thing is, and John, I know exactly where you're coming from. My only thing is that, well, if they've got an unfair share of dealing with certain things, then I think we need to pick some of that up. But at the same time, I know exactly what you're talking about too. And maybe it's two completely different discussions, you know, that
I look at it as two different discussions. I agree, because I mean, if the concern is we got to raise water rates to be able to do that. So we're trying to get that part of it down on the billing. That way more of that money can be captured. Well, okay, but we took that into account when we did the sewer plant. And I guess that's my thing is that I understand the position, but I'm just.
I understand.
Double our cost.
When was your last water increase?
Last
How are those in the industry standards right now?
Right at, we're striving to maintain right at that median level. Above 6,500, really our market driven stuff. We're making maintain that median status.
So I'm not sure we're gonna be able to come to a conclusion tonight, that January 27th is a little problematic unless we have a special session, but I think we need to see all this info, your spreadsheet, and then maybe have additional conversations.
Sure, if I had a spreadsheet issue and it's trying to fix it.
You lost yours too, didn't you, Christina?
I lost mine.
Hey, Chris, I think when I attended some of the IMU meetings, Lou had talked about water increase for like the next 5 years, is that? Am I remembering that correctly?
There's for the next, and nothing's hard to define at this point. I mean, get a couple of years out. What our capital plan really looks like is dedicate what financially means an extra block of main every year. For instance, if we're doing 5 blocks of main this year, we're trying to do 6 blocks of main next year, and the year after that, 7. We have about 20 miles of 4-inch main that, while they're in good shape, don't provide the fire protection necessary. So, you know, by not trying to put rate shock in the system, we're ramping that up to get to a position where we need, rather than, you know, any other consideration. So it is progressive. At a certain point, we can afford it without a rate increase, and next year, you know, we run out of options and have to look at it for that. And obviously, cost of chemicals, supplies, everything, that all plays a role. What may or may not be necessary the next year.
Current, and I apologize for just asking this off what's the current water rate? It's okay if you don't know it.
It's base rate is $10. So that includes the first 1,000 gallons of water, and then it is $6.25 on all the marginal rates.
Sorry, my computer kind of totally died. Would agree that our allocation methodology is not the best right now, both between the city and IMU and internally between the city itself and IMU in itself. Do think that a straight revenue model makes it really clear and easy to share, and it does provide additional revenue to. It's 22% increase. But once you start adding the complexity of flat costs, that's really, really squirrely, because you start looking at the driver for that. One way you could argue that all their costs are fixed. One way you could argue that none of them. One way you could argue that it's calls for service. And another way you could say, well, calls wouldn't matter if we eliminated stormwater altogether, still the same number of people in the building. The call is under 5 lines of business. So I want to make sure we're net effect, not impacting the residents. And if we do impact the residents, we do it transparent. That's my core values.
Do the 2.6.
The revenue model, 2.
Revenue model.
Revenue. It does not affect customers.
So the only, that's the challenge. Customer rates are affected if we don't mutually agree upon raising and lowering. But politically for them, it's very difficult to lower and then have to raise later. I think it's an easy story to share because we can tell the community, look, we are adjusting this and it's an accounting. It's just a straight allocation accounting so that we're all in the right methodology that we can all agree upon. And this is having 0 effect because we're going down and up, and then we're being true to the people that you're constituent, people that we serve. And then raise, that's where I always come back, and then do our raising, because sewer is going to have its new operational costs. We are going to have to look at different rates and structures for sewer, and we have a study going on right now to figure that out. Water is going to have to do the same. Storm drainage, we already did it for. Recycling, if it's not carrying its true cost for subsidizing it, then we should raise recycling so that it's paying for its proportionate share. It's just finding that balance of what is a good and fair.
And to the, is this a net increase in net change? I do think that, I mean, since the expenses is a net 0. And I guess if you want to look at it, you know, this way, and this may come off a little harsh, but you know, we're working towards capital goals, and it would take a rate increase of X with this proposal it would take a rate increase of X plus some other amount, depending on where we land there. So guess it comes down to the dollars are the same, the expenses are the same. This, we're not creating money, we're not saving money. This is the same pot of money that the expenses will occur this way. It's totally whether a fair share proposal. And I would argue at 13% for the city funds, that's not a fair share. That's artificially low. And whether you point to electric subsidizing, water subsidizing, those two funds were subsidizing lesser costs of sewer for some time now. So, in my mind, because we're not changing expenses, this is a cost neutral adjustment. This is just an equity of distribution between the two organizations and not changing the underlying expenses. So the customer impact is going to exist somewhere. It's just where should it exist, and different opinions on that.
You're banking the money for water. What did sewer have?
I mean, that's,
Because we would be raising sewer to pay for, and again, we're all one, right? We all want a positive here, but doesn't it seem that maybe that should come from water?
well, and I guess what I'd argue, if we go back to the original 13%, water has been paying for sewer, subsidizing sewer billing for some time now. So it's not that we're increasing or forcing an increased cost in the two. This really is what is an equitable share. And I think 8713, I feel, again, my opinion, I feel 8713 is not an equitable share. Others might argue differently.
Always remember, 100% is paid by the resident.
Right, I get it, and I understand that, and I don't think that the current rate is right either, but I also don't believe that the 60.
56, 30, 33.
Yeah, I don't know if that's seems.
I think that was an attempt, our direction from the trustees was, we wanted a formulaic based, fact-based distribution formula. And, absent that, I think identifying the direct fixed cost is a point in fact and is a data point to consider. And certainly I'll make this point. This is, as I look at the 6630, that is kind of an end goal. All along, if we wanted to set this somewhere in between, I think I'd be happy to come up with that formula that we can work towards. And to the extent that it would be great if we could change this overnight, but understanding that it does have impact and that impact needs to be recognized and be able to be evaluated. So if we wanted to take this and look at it and say, an end goal, end state, it's something that we all could be happy and happy with. Certainly there's compromise here and there's a 3-year burden and we will work up to it. It doesn't have to be all one fell swing.
Can you go back to the hard costs? I want to see the breakdown of the.
So
This is the hard, this is 639 is the.
No. They're hard costs. I
Yeah,
want to see their budget.
Highlighted in yellow.
Very beginning, because here's the rub right here, in my opinion. That's where it goes down to is. These are,
Presentation.
yeah, those are those things that we have no say over, but yet we're gonna pay for. And that's where I guess that's, again, I'll go back to, they had a large increase in cost in their system because of bringing fiber on, which is fine, but that doesn't have anything to do with sewer or water or water or any of the previous ones. It was fiber changed all that. Well, so when that cost comes in, now we're picking up a larger portion of that because of fiber. So that's where I'm going.
The software costs have been paid off, so there are no.
But it's the annual cost though.
Well, the operational costs, and those would exist with any software.
But they were a lot larger with that than they are with what Civic or whatever it was that we were using. So anyway.
I mean, honestly, I'm just gonna kind of be blunt. It benefits citizens, therefore benefits the city.
Understand within
No matter
our
how
budget,
we do it,
impacts our
so-
budgets though.
I get that, but at some point, I mean, I feel like there's so much looking at past and looking at, this previous.
Well, I think we're all in
we paid
agreement.
For this for so long, we paid for this.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
has to
Let
be-
Christina finish.
That has to be cut out. I mean, we have to come to a point where, like you've said, we are all in this as one. It is not them versus us versus them. So however we come up with whatever numbers we come up with.
Those things have an impact though.
I understand the impact, but
You know, they have an
it
impact.
also impacts the people. So not just the
Because
city.
then guess what? We get to raise our taxes on our citizens because we've got.
Or we have to raise sewer rates because.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
I get it,
I'm gonna
but
say this back
when
and forth.
you put in new sewer lines, it's benefiting the people, it's benefiting the new houses. That get built, right? So when you're updating and doing things to improve the water line, same thing. It's a benefit to the city for new housing developments, for repairing old housing developments.
We do that every year when we reline sewer lines and we rebuild all of our intakes. And I mean, we do the same things and we've been doing them for a number of years, but it's never, we figured it out based on what our rates are. We don't, then now we have to adjust things. We're all doing the same things. And again, I don't have a problem with coming up with a new rate because I do feel like we're too low, but I don't feel it's as high as what we were given tonight.
Well, I'm not arguing the rate percentage of it. I just felt that I needed to say that because I keep hearing the comments, for so long we did this, or for so long we did this, and we have to stop looking at the past.
matters, though. It
The
matters.
numbers matter,
It
but
matters.
not the action. Yes.
Well,
It's the action. I'm talking about cost.
If we- The step of raising and lowering, impacting the residents, that's where it really becomes political. Because if we raise and lower, power and water should raise and lower too, because power and water are off balance as well, internally to them. If all of them reset and there's no impact on the resident, then we have served our residents well, and we have a methodology going forward. And then if we're all transparent about raising our rates for the right purpose, we're not raising sewer to benefit water, we're raising water to benefit water, we're raising sewer to benefit sewer. This is where it's a challenge between the boards, because I totally get that the IMU board wants to serve its residents well, which are the same, by having a good water system. They're just trying to get more money, and I don't fault them for that at all, because this is a glaring we're not proportionate. It's just, what's the right methodology in a very political time? You can't get there unless you make a.
That's why I said there's really two different questions. The question is rates and whether or not one side raises or lowers, whatever you're gonna do. And then the fact that we are disproportionate in the amount of money that we actually are contributing to some of the expenses. I agree, John, maybe some of the things that we picked up cost more than what we might have done on our own, but the bottom line is, and I think you and I agree on this too, that we probably need to pick up our proportion a little bit in that area, but it becomes somewhat political, and I understand your argument, Ben, but it becomes somewhat political because, you have to be able to do exactly what you're saying. You've got to, it's got to be a net negative or net zero for residents in my opinion, somehow. And again, John's right with the raising taxes. We just sat here tonight and looked at some options on different things and how much money. Andy did a presentation and I'm sitting here thinking, where are we going to go with our tax rate? And what, we've already got the rollback went up a little bit, and now and then assessments and our levies. So we're having to figure this all in too. I do like Chris's comment that maybe we phase it in over a 3-year period or 4-year period or whatever the case is, but we really take a look at what our real costs are and are we really contributing our real costs that we have and are occurring to them because of that. But I just think that we've got to be, I agree with you, it's got to be net zero. And if we have to raise, if they have to raise rates, they have to raise rates. If we have to raise rates, we do that to make it happen, or lower or whatever,
In time,
in time.
for the right purpose, for the right reason.
I think we made some progress. We're all in agreement. We would, I think, well, I haven't heard from two people. But I think we're all on the same page, right? That we need to contribute our fair share. But we want that to be fair along everyone too. We don't want just our method to be changed. I mean, we're a team, right? So maybe you and Ben can, I just don't think we're gonna be able to meet your January 27th deadline without having to call a special meeting. We do have a meeting following Monday to regular meeting that could probably be that we're gonna publish, so.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I'd kind of look at Chris if she can make changes to the budget faster and, you know, Andy, if there's any flexibility on deadline trying to accomplish. Because this is something, our budget is an input towards yours, and so as we're waiting on a decision, comment, a process, that's gonna impact Andy and Jackie's ability to publish city budgets. And, you know, making every effort not to, be impactful on that's, you know.
Thing that I think would be helpful. I know when we were looking at raising the sewer rates, the had provided a long-term, like over the course of time. Is it possible to see that from the IMU side of things also, just like a study out a few years to have a better understanding of not only just the right now, but the next like 5 years, what we would be looking at. So if we're looking at it today, we can kind of see it a long-term perspective comparatively to what we already know on our side of things.
Certainly, and we have those and, you know, there are certain assumptions in there, you know,
Right.
where we get to this. And, you know, so I would say, again, without a change, I would be suggesting one rate increase to the trustees. With a change, I would be suggesting.
I think that would be
lower one.
helpful.
And
Yeah.
so,
From my perspective. I agree.
Give us a starting point. Does the council feel comfortable at this methodology of a revenue? A distribution of three, because at 2.32% of everybody's revenue is a increase that they could plan on of 22% or, sorry, free computer here. It is an increase of $21,000 to them. It does step us towards proportionality and it gives them something to start with. Now it's really talking about the percentage steps along the way to what we feel is a comfortable overhead rate. And how do we come to that? Like, I totally trust the budget and I trust them when they're tracking their calls for service and all that type of. What's a reasonable industrial rate for a utility we should be having as an overhead? Is it 33? Is it 5? It's probably somewhere. But it gives us a launching pad. But again, I always come back full circle to the fact that it would be so much easier for me to digest all of this, irregardless of the methodology chosen, if we were proportionally raising lower every single line item so that we're on that method. But that takes a commitment on the other side.
and I think that's happening just as a matter of mechanics. We've got a CIP plan, you know, and I think to a certain extent, my intent would be not to modify that. And I think that's a trustee decision. We know how much we need to spend. It's a matter and frankly, I mean, that will, you know, we are looking at a water rate increase. That's no doubt. You know, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. And in my mind, since the dollars are the same, we're just shifting who's paying for them. It is zero impact and
It is until we increase the sewer and the water and the recycling and you don't decrease, then that creates additional revenue for the other line items. So that's where it becomes political. Yeah, because if we did it today and then we take and do our CIP increases in July, then we're doing it transparent. That's the crux.
So is this the methodology that you recommend?
And I go back. Methodology is less important to me than not having it changed to 639. If we go here and so what we're really saying is, if we held the power and the water, the amount that they are currently taxing onto the residents, and we change ours and ours goes up, but theirs doesn't, that means more money is going to those funds without a proportionate decrease for the benefit of the residents. That's where I'm challenged and I feel uncomfortable with this because I don't think it would be right to ask them to raise rates for us, just to raise rates for them. But I like the idea of carrying one hat, going what's in the best interest of the residents, and a good, healthy water system is. They need to do it transparently. We need to do it transparently. And to their point out an issue right off the bat, power is not paying its proportionate share compared to water. But to point an issue towards us, our sewer is not fully self-sustaining either. We're contributing lost dollars to it and we're subsidizing it ourselves, which really should be going to public safety. We have issues, and is there plenty of fingers to point backwards? Yeah, there is. We just need to recognize that we need to get every single one of our utilities healthy for the benefit of residents and do it in the most logical way possible and in the most transparent way possible.
My thinking is that we get them healthy and then we look at how we can put a plan together to do that.
I mean, can you send us this?
Sure. There's 3 tabs on the bottom. The first was the one that Chris initially gave to me. The second is when I was trying to understand it. And the third is this basic model where you can change what will change this into a yellow number. And if you change it, it will change the amount of the city's out.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
I'll send that out. And I'll send it not only to you, but I'll make sure that Chris and his staff and all of the IMU board members have it. Equally and fairly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for all your.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Lots to digest. So, thank you. Great, we'll move on to item number 3, which is discussion. Regarding the station. Hold on.
Maybe your
Technology is wonderful in the work.
My computer, it's back now.
it just froze.
It just went. 50%.
I think that's. But I mean.
You want to? Minutes? Really?
Yes, let's
Gonna take a long time?
5 minutes real fast here.
Setting up the technology.
Yeah.
I went to the wrong month. I'm in March, that's why. The 9th of February. 2 months.
Steve.
Oh, yeah.
I think. I'm.
I know.
We appreciate all that you guys do at the Historical
I brought
Society.
Wine.
We're excited for
It's coffee though.
the land and
Wine.
we move.
You don't have to rush, right? It's true.
I love the space.
It is still even. Happy to be here this evening. One of council's 22-23 priorities was to complete a compensation study. I'm proud to stand before you to have done that. The city engaged GovHR to complete the classification and compensation study, and as part of that study, they determined several things which we'll go through. They did a 7-factor analysis of our comps. They did surveys to chosen municipalities. They did introductory meetings with all employees. They had employees complete job analysis questionnaires, getting there. That was reviewed by each employee's supervisor and city. They did virtual employee in each position, and then analyzed all that data to come to you all with a recommendation. At the last council meeting, January 3rd, Rachel Skaggs with GovHR presented to you all the recommendations. We'll go through them individually as a refresher. The first one, recommendation 1, adopt new comparables. This really is essentially to provide external competitiveness for the city's salaries. The salary ranges derived from collection of this data, and they were used to help establish the proposed compensation plan. There are 11 communities with a score of 70 or greater points to be deemed most comparable to the city. They measured population, median household income, total valuation, property tax revenue, total expenditures, salaries and wages paid, and proximity. Those chosen comparables are before you this evening. In addition, we also asked them to get some market data from Ankeny, Urbandale, West Des Moines, and Des Moines. So that is in the tables 1, 2, and 3. The recommendation from GovHR is to adopt these new comparables. Are you okay with us proceeding?
It is the establishment of all the data going
It is.
forward. So we just want to make sure that you are okay with all
That's kind of what we've been using with a few
Changes.
And it's
I think
more
it's a,
Metro cities.
I think it's great.
Thank you.
Recommendation 2 is to adopt compensation ranges at the 50th percentile. Again, the 50th percentile allows the city to remain competitive, but not be too aggressive in our wages, but also all of the following assumptions we're tying back to the 50th percentile. So, okay with compensation ranges at the 50th percentile.
It probably should be important to note that we're really just seeking your direction, and all of these nods of your head right now will be incorporated into a resolution, which will be before your consideration during your next meeting to be formally adopted.
Great. Thank you, Ben.
I was gonna say that at the end, but it makes sense. Thank you. Recommendation 3, adopt a defined step increment plan. GovHR initially recommended between 8 and 12 steps. The 10-step model is what we've actually presented to you all. It's not overly aggressive, but it does allow us to be competitive right in the middle of initial recommendation. Really what that does is provide minimum and maximums with a 3.4 increase between each step. Employees are advanced through those steps upon satisfactorily completing their annual performance evaluation. Really what this does is it allows the city to maintain flexibility, but also helps us to recruit, reward, and retain motivated staff. Going through the GovHR's recommendation for the defined step increment plan. Recommendation 4 was to adopt an 11-level structure. Really what this does is provide consistency among the different pay grades, grades 1, grades 2 through 4, grades 5 through 8, and 9 through 11. You can read them there with gradations in between each step. The GovHR's recommendation was to adopt an 11-level pay grade structure. With us proceeding. And lastly, there was a recommendation to adopt job title changes. Currently, we have an administrative bookkeeper. They're proposing a specialist title. and an administrative clerk, deputy clerk to deputy city clerk assistant. You.
Made sense.
As Ben said, the resolutions memorializing all of these recommendations will be.
Thank you.
You, Courtney. You're gonna wanna go at 9 PM every single time, right? This is great, yep.
Unless.
No, that's fine. I just think GovHR did a rating up and you guys did a great job.
I thought we were moving so fast in that agenda tonight.
You did?
I did. We fast.
Yeah, we were.
And then.
We gotta have like, where we all agree, like that's our wall, we gotta just move forward. All right, so we will adjourn and then we have an exempt session for Iowa Code 21.9. So I need a first and second motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Correct. And all those in favor? Think so. All right, we will move into exempt session.
23, 69, 60.
Yeah,
Oh, you're watching it.
didn't watch it.